Realizing that I have the drive, the guts, the brain, and the skills to be an entrepreneur was extremely helpful. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Atanaku Effect. As always, I'm your host, Claudel, and I'm super excited about today's episode. But before that, let me tell you a little story that happened to me a couple of days ago, because this is me actually re-recording this episode. I did it 2 days ago. I started recording, I think it was around 11 p.m. and I was on fire. Like, I don't know if that happened to you. I was extremely excited about the flow of the episode, my choice of words. You know, when you are in that state and exactly what you're thinking, you're expressing it that way, or at least you feel you're expressing it that way. So I was in that state, like really proud, super excited. So I finished recording. I get a glass of water. I'm super excited. I'm like, you know what? Let's just edit it. It's so good. It's the best episode you've ever recorded. So let's just edit it and put it out there. The world needs to see it. So I started editing. It was around like 1 a.m. in the morning already. So I was kind of tired. But I started editing. Half an hour into it, I pressed the wrong button and I completely lost the track. I mean, I was devastated. So try POMZ, undo, nothing happens. I spent the next 3 hours looking at how to recover deleted files from macOS Catalina. I downloaded 6 different type of software, nothing at all. I was really crushed, really crushed. But again, I got into that state of, oh my God, why haven't you made a copy? Why did you think it was a good idea to start editing at 1 a.m. in the morning? Why aren't you backing up your machine with Time Machine? Like any type of, and I'm sure it happens to you. I just figured I should talk about it before getting to recording, because I think it's probably something that happened to you at some point in the past. Either to document your writing, an idea that you have, and you didn't write it the moment it came to mind, and you just beat yourself like, I should have done it. Anyway, this is the second recording. I'm praying not to delete this one. So I will save it, and back save it. I will save it online, on the cloud, on Microsoft Drive, Google Drive. There's no way I'm losing this one. Why am I excited? From 2010 to 2020 pretty much coincided with me going from 20 to 30 years old. So in a couple of months, I will be 31. And I figured I should make a point about entering this new decade purposefully. I think the years from 30 to 40 are extremely important. So I want to make sure that I have a set of goals for myself from a personal point of view, from a professional point of view. And so what better way to think about entering a new decade than actually looking at the previous decade, think about the learnings that I've acquired and how I can, use them to inform my decisions for this next decade. And while I'm doing that, I might as well share with you, right? I think it's only fair. Possibly and hopefully some of those learnings will be helpful to some of you. So without any further ado, let's get into it. I've broken down the learnings in 4 different buckets. Number 1 is health. Number 2, relationships. Number 3, careers. And number 4 is a bucket which has a mix of different learnings that I just called miscellaneous. And as always, quick disclaimer, as you know, it's obviously impossible to either write down or do a podcast or a video about all the learnings of a decade. But those are the ones that for the past 4 months, I've been thinking about making this episode and just thinking about the learnings. Those are the ones that came to mind the most. So again, it's just a matter of now structuring them and presenting them to you in a concise and structured manner. So number 1 learning, health. Health, and health again. From 10 to 20, you don't really think about your health. If you're lucky, you're in good shape. You don't think about what you eat really, because again, if you're lucky, at that age, you can basically eat whatever you want and it doesn't really affect your body. At least it was the case for me. I didn't care about what I was eating. I didn't care about exercising at all. I was playing soccer with some friends at school, sometimes on the weekend, but that was it. I never really thought about my health. In my head, as long as I'm not sick, then I'm fine. There's nothing else I have to do. And then come the 20s, From 20 to 25, it was about the same. I wasn't really caring about what I was eating, and I was still in shape, pretty good shape actually. And then after 25, your body starts telling you like, hey, I'm going to be much more responsive to what you're putting into me. So yeah, I started gaining weight. That was coinciding with business school as well in the US. And some of you who've been to business school or any grad school, you're probably involved of the amount of social gatherings, I'll put it that way, that are happening. So yes, I was eating like trash foods. I was, drinking motivational beverage, as we call it, at UPenn in Philadelphia. So I started gaining weight. And I realized, okay, if I want to keep, the body I had a couple of years ago, I have to start exercising. I have to control what I'm eating. So on the health bucket, I'm going to break it down into two sections, the physical health and the mental health. The physical health is just exercising more. Doing any type of physical exercise is extremely helpful, not just for the physical health, but for the mental health as well. The benefit has been proven. Physical exercise helps fighting against stress, anxiety, depressions, and so on. There's a lot of studies that's been done of that. You can look at the one for the NCBI, the National Center for Biotechnology Information. They provide a really good breakdown on the benefits of physical health on mental health. So physical health was the one, just starting exercising more, eating more. And mental health, mindfulness was key to me. I started to meditate daily. I hasn't been extremely consistent, but I would say probably since I started meditating about 2 or 3 years ago, I haven't done 2 weeks without meditating for at least half an hour during the day, generally in the morning. So that's one thing that helps a lot with my mental health, self-awareness, and also talking a lot more, and either it's to close friends, a family member. I think it's extremely important to, talk about what's going through your mind. Otherwise, you end up, as I've talked to some people in their 40s and their 50s, and they have so many things they like to say, but they don't know how to start. They don't know sometimes how to break down their own problems because they've been waiting 30 years to actually talk about it to someone else. It becomes a lot more difficult to express what's going on. So the mental health part, definitely talking or even writing, just find a way to express what's going on in your head. Either it's a problem you're having, a trauma you have experienced, a failure, you're having a hard time moving on, or even joy, like anything that you think can help that just makes you feel better. I think you should do that. So overall on health, again, physical health, mental health, exercising a lot, meditating, and just talking more and talking purposefully. The second bucket on the learnings from the past decades is around relationships. We judge ourselves based on our intent. We judge other people based on their actions. So I've learned that it's capital to understand the intent behind people's actions and work with that. And by that I mean being able to make the distinction between someone saying something or acting a specific way inadvertently versus on purpose. Clarifying the intent is important before making any type of decisions. Otherwise, you're just flying blind. So I've been lucky. If you've been following the previous episode, you know that I've lived in Cameroon, France, and Brazil, Singapore, and a lot of different places. So I've seen how the same word in different cultures, different countries, different languages doesn't necessarily mean the same thing, but the intent is always universal. So as the world is going global, as we are traveling a lot more, as the people close to you are not necessarily from your neighborhood, from your state, your country, or even your whole continent, it's becoming more and more important to understand the subtle nuances of languages. And that's where clarifying intent is important. So a simple example is someone says something, instead of being triggered by that, if that's something that would have triggered you, maybe a simple question like, what do you mean by that? Or where are you going with that? Or you provide an answer and then you clarify, was that your question or was that what you meant? It helps people not necessarily aware of their communication style. It helps people not necessarily very clear into their intent, and it helps you understand them better. So big learning there. It helped me in all of my relationships, either socially or professionally. Always clarify intent. The second learning, my parents have always told me not everyone who smiles and laughs with you likes you. And that's another thing. From 10 to 20 years old, that didn't really make sense to me. Like, my friends are around me, we're playing soccer together, we're playing video games together, we're joking together. Of course they like me. What do you mean? But last decade, where I experienced my first traumas, my first failures, I've noticed the list of people that I considered very close to me shrunk down. And it kind of opened my mind to that advice from my parents. Not everyone smiling, laughing, partying, joking with you actually likes you. And I've seen how, for a lot of people, as long as everything's going well, you're successful, you're happy, you're a good person, you're always smiling, they will want to be around you. But the second you're experiencing failure, trauma, like any types of negative feelings, they get away from you. So huge learning there to just get deeper into relationship. Don't be afraid to not just rely on interpreting what people are saying to you, or just maybe just smiling with you, and assume that they are walking with you and they are walking for you and they are doing everything they can to help you. They are not necessarily acting for your benefit. They don't necessarily have your interest when they are saying or doing something. So it might be super obvious for some people, but again, the last decade, going from 20 to 30, that was a big opening, a big learning for me. The third learning on the relationships part is how important it is to be there for people going through pain, trauma, failure, grief, any type of negative feelings. For instance, the first 5 years in my 20s, so from 20 to 25, because I'm the last in my family, I never had to take care of anyone. So I have one brother and two sisters, a bunch of different cousins and uncles. They've always been taking care of me. So I kind of grew up, unfortunately, and maybe some of you, if you are the last born in your family, you can relate to that. You don't necessarily learn how to take care of someone, or even yourself, because everyone is taking care of you. I know for a fact that what my brother was doing to help the family at home when he was 12 or 13, at the same age at home, I wasn't doing that because I have another brother who can do that for me. So there's a lot of learnings that is obviously no one's fault, but I think I inadvertently miss. So I realized that I wasn't really good at expressing myself, especially when I had a problem. So I think people around me always assumed that everything was going well with me because I was either hiding or not talking about what was not going well. So I didn't know exactly how to reach out to people as well when they were in pain, when they were traumatized or experiencing failure. And again, up until that point, I haven't myself really experienced any type of strong pain or trauma or failures that will keep with me for a long time. So when I did last decade, I was appalled by how people were either not reaching out to help for me or how they were reaching out for me in a very strange way. An example, you might have done that before. Again, I'm not casting the stone to anyone there. I'm just offering a way to do that better. If someone is helping, if someone is hurting, someone is going through a problem, most of us, the way we reach out for help, we just say, hey man, how you doing? I heard about this and that. Let me know how I can help. I'm there, call me anytime, I'm there for you. And then we leave it at that. I think the intent there is correct. I think most of us, when we say that, if a friend actually calls us at 1 a.m., we would wake up and try to help. But the problem is, when someone is already experiencing a very negative experience, they don't necessarily know themselves what they want. They don't necessarily know themselves what type of help they need from you especially. They don't necessarily know even how they can help themselves. So when you come to them and say, hey, anything you need, just reach out. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what I need. So what do I do now? It's adding another burden to what they're already feeling, because you're basically saying, hey, I don't know how to help you. So on top of what you're going through right now, think about me specifically and how I can help you. So how do you alleviate that then? How do you make that easier for the other person? Just show up. Send a text message, call, visit the person, bring some food, oranges, whatever, bring them out, go for a hike. Maybe not right now because of the coronavirus, but when the world gets back to what it is. But anything to just, either get the person out of that state, or sometimes even better, talk about a problem. I think I also had that thought that when someone is experiencing a negative, they don't want to talk about it. And that's not true, again, for the same reason, because sometimes you just don't know how or what to talk about. But if you bring the subject, they will talk about it. And it's even better because you know, they know, they know you know. So if you don't say anything, in those moments, the mind sometimes go to negativity and like, oh, they don't ask because they don't care. You have to be very empathetic or compassionate to know that, okay, the other person cares about me. They just think that if they ask, it will make me feel bad. But if they just ask, most of the times, at least for me, it was just better. So to wrap up the relationships learning, number one, we judge ourselves based on our intent and other based on their actions. So let's try to judge other people's based on their intent too. Number two, not everyone around you who smiles with you, jokes with you, actually likes you and works in your best interest. And number three, be there for people experiencing any type of negative feelings and be there better, actually show up. Now, third bucket on the learnings, career. I've learned that it's important to have a life objective and it's important to have an objective for each job. Specifically, be able to articulate why I want to work for company X working as a Y. What type of skills am I expecting to learn in that specific role? How does it help my overall objective? So, my undergrad years, my number one goal at graduation was to work for the big company possible in the nicest role possible. If you ask me back then, why do you want to work for that company or why do you want to work in that role? I couldn't tell you, just the thing to do, right? It's cool, maybe it's paying well, socially it's seen as a good job. And that was it. I wasn't able to articulate, I would like to work as a software engineer because I like building things or because I like the structure of being a software engineer or I want in the future to be able to build my own company. I had some ideas, but it wasn't really articulate. It was okay, if Apple is giving me a job and if a startup is giving me a job, I'm going to choose Apple because I want to work for Apple. That was my rationale. So while I think it's okay in the very early years, so that was 2011, so 9 years ago, I think as we quickly grow up, we realize that the problem with that is you're just going to jump from company to company, from function to function with no rationale. And you can hit a point where there's no bigger company, there's no bigger function. Now what do you do? Like, no matter what or how you define the big companies, is it the number of employees? Is it the valuation? There's always a bigger company. And even if you reach that bigger company, I think at the moment it's probably Amazon, I think. What then? Let's say you work for Amazon because it's your dream job. You work as a, product manager. Then what's the goal? Are you going to stop at the corporate ladder? I'm going to go from senior product manager to principal. Okay, again, it's good for the paycheck, maybe good for your ego, but what's the goal? Right? You will learn specific skills as you climb the corporate ladder, but what's the life objectives? What if Amazon goes down tomorrow? What do you do? So having that overarching objective and defining that the last decade has been tremendously helpful for me because I was able to tell myself very specifically why I want to work for a specific company, why I want to work for that specific role, what I want to get from that, so that on a frequent basis, when I check up with myself, it will be very easy to know when to leave a role or when to leave a company. Because I would say, okay, I joined that role for a specific reason. Have I reached that goal? No, not yet. Okay, what is missing? Do I need a promotion because I experience those other skills via promotion? Yes, okay, better. Let's talk to my manager. How can I achieve that? If not, okay, maybe it's not the role. Is that the company? Is there a better at that company? But at least because I know where I want to be exactly 20 years from now, I can just backtrack to today and make every decision very easy. So again, career-wise for me, more than anything else, the most important learning of the past decade was realizing that I needed a professional goal and actually finding it. The second learning career-wise for me was understanding whether or not I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Why does it matter? I think especially nowadays, we had a lot of examples, very young CEOs. I'm thinking Mark Zuckerberg, for instance. And I think he put into the mind of a lot of millennials that idea that entrepreneurship is the way to go. And sometimes what I don't hear in those advice is it's the way to go if you have what it takes. So I've thought about being an entrepreneur before, and I was extremely lucky this past decade to actually experience being an entrepreneur. Know what it means to be in a position where you actually get to call the shots. Know what it means to be in a position where you have a whole team that join your idea based on your pitch. So everything you're doing, they're looking up at you and say, hey, I'm looking at you. What do you decide? What should we do? In the corporate world, it tends to be easier because you have a manager. You have a manager. So if there's uncertainty, you can just look back at them and say, hey, what do I do? And you will know for a fact they have your best interest because their success depends on your success. So you look up at your manager or your senior manager, your director, you ask her questions, they give you direction. And even if it fails, you can't guarantee that he or she will have your back because they were the one giving the advice in the first place. But as an entrepreneur, you have no one to look up to. The investors is providing you the money and say, hey, I trust your idea. I believe in what you're saying. And at some level, you report to your investors. So if it doesn't work out, you have to fully assume your decision, explain them to your team, managing up and down. So realizing the past decade that I have what it takes, even if it was a failed startup, was extremely helpful because it helped guide my long-term goal, right? If I realized that the balance between my work life and my professional life was not for me, if I realized that I couldn't handle the pressure of having a team basically depending on me, not just on my decision, but for a living, if I didn't realize that, I think I could have wanted to stay in the corporate ladder forever and not, maybe missing that opportunity. So realizing that, knowing that I have the drive, the guts, the brain, and the skills to be an entrepreneur was extremely helpful. Now, let's go to the final bucket that I called miscellaneous. It's going to be a bunch of different learnings that I didn't know how to fit into the previous bucket: health, career, and relationships. The number one learning on miscellaneous is creativity. I learned how crucial it is to be creative and to constantly explore creativity avenues. During the past decades, I learned the importance of consuming less and producing more. So, on how to be creative, it was really, really helpful to me. Everything that I was buying, at least past my 25, I made a point to ask myself, why was I buying it? How will I improve it? How would I make it better? How would I make it different? Or how would I customize it to my own need? Then I switched it to, wait a second, if I buy it, why can't I do it myself? Especially if it's something that to be able to create, I already have the skills for. And I'm thinking software, I'm thinking product. I think that mindset was really important. Switch from consuming to producing. Because it's very difficult to have and to make an impact by consuming. And it's 1 billion times easier by producing. Because when you're producing, you're giving it to someone else, you're making their life better. You're making your community better, your country better, the world better. So huge learning from the past decade. Everything you see, everything you touch, everything you experience, absorb it and ask yourself, how would I make it? And how would I make it? And actually start doing it. And that's basically what led to me creating the podcast at the end of last decade. The second learning on the miscellaneous bucket is the idea that sacrifices still matter. The notion that taking a step today would not necessarily bear fruit right away. The notion that it's okay to lose a little today to win big tomorrow. So again, when I look at my generation, millennials, during the past decade, there's been an explosion of services that had made the idea of sacrifice kind of disappear. I've talked about Mark Zuckerberg, I think already being a billionaire by the time he was like 20 something. I'm thinking about products or services such as video on demand. I remember growing up, it was amazing to, go to a store, buy a DVD, come back home, the whole excitement, or waiting for a movie to get out, or waiting for a TV show every single week to get out. Sometimes you had to wait for a month for the next episode to come out. Nowadays, with Netflix, you can literally be in your bed at 4 a.m. wanting to watch The Office Season 4, Episode 9. You don't even have to leave your bed to have that experience. You can literally be in your bed, take out your phone, open the Netflix app, and right here, right now. So that whole idea of I can have what I want right here, right now, I think it's good. I mean, I'm not I don't want to sound as if I'm 100 years old and, it was better in the past. No, it's definitely a good thing. But I think the negative part of it that I'm seeing mostly on my generation and younger people is forgiving that it's okay to make an investment today, it doesn't work out, or it will pay tomorrow. And one big example, personally, on the past decade was business school. Like the tuition for my MBA, MA dual degree was close to $250,000. Yes, I'm gonna repeat that: $250,000 US. That's the price of a house. That's the price of 5 houses in Cameroon. I mean, it's a huge amount of money. So it was a difficult choice to make, but absolutely no regret. I would not have traveled as extensively as I did without it. I would not have learned as much as I did, both from classes and from my classmates as I did. And I wouldn't have had the amazing professional experiences that I had without it. I can even claim that the position I have today, my job today, is thanks to the previous position I have and thanks to business school. So that's a very simple example of a sacrifice, because I'll be repaying that loan for a long time, but it has changed my professional and social life and mindsets. Another good learning on the miscellaneous bucket is that the world is not run by people pleasers. The world is not run by people pleasers. It's important to have a growth mindset. It's important to be flexible and quickly adapt while facing changes and uncertainties. That's fine. But it's extremely important to learn and know how to say no, how to stand your ground when you need to. In any relationships, professional or social, whatever, it's important to know when to not agree with any ask or demand from the other one. Let's dig deeper into that. Why is it hard to say no in the first place? Fear, right? Depending on who you are, it can be the fear of conflict. You think that, if I don't accept, if I say no, then it's going to lead to an argument. I don't like arguments, so I don't say no. It can be the fear of disappointment. Even if there's not a conflict, if I say no, maybe I'll be disappointing the other one, so I can't say no. Or the fear of reciprocity. If I say no to you today, you'll say no to me tomorrow, and I don't want that. So now that we understand why it's hard to say no, let's go one step deeper. Right? We talk about conflict, disappointment, reciprocity. Is conflict necessarily a bad thing? Is it reasonable to expect never disappointing anybody? And finally, should our actions be always motivated by the will or the need of reciprocity? No, no, and no. Handling conflict and difficult conversation is a life skill to master for whoever desires to be in a leadership position or impactful position at work, at home, or in society. We're human beings, so we will be disappointed by people and we will disappoint, period. So in that moment, asking or thinking that you will be disappointing someone, it's fine. You know, I think it's important to feel that way, but it's important to understand that trigger and take the other steps. That, okay, you know what? I know it might be disappointing, but that's okay. It's okay to disappoint. And finally, Dale Carnegie might disagree with me there, but winning friends and influencing people does not necessarily involve a perfect and constant reciprocity. So if the fear is if I say no today, you will say no to me tomorrow, that shouldn't be a fear, because every single step and action shouldn't be with an ulterior goal. And here is like, oh, if I don't say to you, I shouldn't be afraid that you will say no to me tomorrow. And that's where, getting back to clarifying the intent, if you let someone know and explain why exactly you are saying no, explaining your principles, your rationale, and letting them know it's nothing personal, technically, if the person uses that no to say no to you next time, then it's not a real person in the first place. Or it's not someone you should have a deep relation, I think. So knowing how to say no, when to say no, being okay to disappoint was a huge learning. It made a tremendous change in my relationships with my family, my parents, my coworkers during the last decade. Another learning on the miscellaneous: give yourself permission. Give yourself permission. Permission to try, permission to speak, permission to explain, permission to ask, permission to demand. Why does that matter? In my early 20s, when I had my first job, I started watching a lot of TED videos, just understanding what thought leaders in a range of different areas were thinking about a specific subject. And I realized, and I also started, by the way, interesting myself into politics a bit more, because I understood that as I was living into different countries and everything, it was important for me to understand the laws of wherever I was living, and also understand how the party in place were thinking about the future of the country. Also, as I was already working, I was in a company thinking about the corporate leader back then. I was also listening to how, executives were talking about their companies, their strategies, their vision for the company or their industry. And it led me to notice that they always, or almost always, were starting by explaining the principles governing their decisions. And it made a lot of sense to me. It was extremely easy to understand why you make that decision if I understand why. Again, getting back to the idea of intent. But I wasn't doing it for some reason. And I wasn't doing it because for some reason in my head, I thought that you need to be a leader, you need to be a CEO, you need to be a leader of a political party to talk that way. I used to think that for people to understand truly what you mean, they have to look up to you. They have to know, okay, if you are the CEO, if you are the president, if you are the senator, you've earned the right to be there and you've earned the right to listen to you. But unless or until you get there, you cannot talk that way. And that was a huge mistake. In my relationships, in my professional life, it prevented me from presenting my ideas. Or even when I was presenting my ideas, it was not really clear because I sometimes failed to explain the principles and rationale behind those decisions. I'm still not there 100%. I'm still learning. But the same concept of giving myself permission drastically changed how I approached it. And it even made a big dent, specifically at work, where I realized talking to my direct report, talking to my peers, or talking to my managers made absolutely no difference in how I was talking. Because I started not caring about impressing anyone. I started not caring about giving a lot more weight of what my manager was saying versus my peer. Number one, because I thought that everyone has a voice, everyone has an opinion, it's important to hear them. And number two, because I realized that when I was able to clearly expressing my ideas with the principles and rationale guiding them, the feedback was almost always positive. Even if the idea was not adopted, the feedback that I got was when I have an idea, I stick to it, I present it the right way. But I would have never gotten that if I thought, okay, no, I cannot speak that way because it's my manager. I cannot speak that way because it's the CEO of the company. I cannot speak that way because I just joined the company. So all of those different reasons, giving myself permission, have unlocked that type of fear or restraint that I've always had until a couple of years ago. Again, still learning, but an amazing learning from the past decade that will definitely roll into this new one. So there you go, folks. Again, as I said, the list is by no means exhaustive. I think it's impossible to list all of the learnings in the past 10 years, but yeah, I think that's it. That 2010 to 2020, the last decade was, for the most part, an amazing decade for me. It changed me from a boy to a man, to a much more caring friend, son, brother, nephew, and colleague. And I'm really looking forward to the next decade. I really believe that I have the strong foundation on top of which, unless something completely drastic happens in my life, I think the next decade should be an amazing one for myself, my loved ones, and any company I'll be lucky to work for or with. So I hope any of those learnings were helpful to you. I hope you learned something. If you do, please be a cool guy, a cool gal. Send me feedback. What was your learning, or is it one learning that you disagree with, don't understand? As always, I'm available on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Actually, LinkedIn is probably going to be a good and best media to reach out to me. Email claudel@atalaku.africa. But yeah, let me know what you think. Stay safe. We're going through tough times. I'm feeling you, those of you who got sick, lost a family member, lost your job, like any type of burden. I definitely feel you. So stay safe, be well, and talk to you next time.